Hey guys, Pastor Mike here, and just wanted to touch base with you this week, mostly because the audio did not come through on our live stream this week, and most of the content, the things that we were talking about are super important, super fundamental, foundational to your relationships, and I just feel like it's that big of a deal that you need to have this piece. If you're not yet dating, get this information. If you're in a dating relationship, here's how to avoid some major mistakes. If you're already married, there's some good tidbits in there for you as well. And so we're talking about wrecking balls, things that threaten to destroy our homes. And one of the biggest home wreckers that I think I see is priorities. Priorities are huge because you can have all of the right ingredients, get them in the wrong order, and still end up with a mess, right? So we can all say that we have these great priorities, right? Family and friends, and we need to take care of the home. We need to work. We need to make money. Activities, that downtime, super important, right? But where does it all fit together? And one of the ways that we talked about this was through the idea of cooking. Right? So when it comes to cooking, there are certain things that you need to know, certain things that you need to do in a particular order to get the right outcome. You know, for whether it's mixing the wet or the dry ingredients and blending them together so that the seasoning is throughout, preheating the oven, cutting some of the ingredients ahead of time, making sure that you have the right ingredients, the right equipment. It all plays together to make this recipe thing work out. But if we have in life all of these priorities, such as our family and our friends and God and church and work, but we get them in the wrong order, it's just not going to turn out right. So laying the right foundation, I think some of the things that I've picked up from cooking that can carry over to this kind of thing as well is what's your end goal, right? What's the goal? Who are you trying to make this for? Because that makes a big difference on what we make. And what does it take, right? What's needed for this? So let's start with that first one. What's my goal? Begin with the end in mind, right? If I want to make a certain dish, then I need to make sure I take the steps to get that, right? Because if I'm aiming at the wrong goal, I'm going to get the wrong product. Or if I'm not sure what goal I'm aiming at, then who knows what I'm going to end up with. And so I need to have the end in mind. And too many times we're just trying to maybe feel better about ourselves. Too many times we're trying to make somebody else happy, and we're not really focused on the end game, right? How do I have the best life possible? How do I invest the most into somebody else's life? How do I raise good and godly kids? You know, and so when you have the right goal in mind, it's going to do a lot to determine what your ultimate outcome is going to be. The second one, who is it for, right? If you're making something for someone who doesn't like that thing that you're making, that's kind of misses the point, right? And if they have food allergies and things like that, right, it's a big deal. You don't want to use those items that they may be allergic to. And so how about even when it comes to our own life? Right, making sure that we pay attention to who it's for. There's too many voices in our world, right? Our bosses want this, our employees want that, the government wants this thing, and our friends want this, and our family wants that, and we're pulled in a lot of different directions. And if we're not careful, we begin working for the wrong audience. And so we're working for that employer, we're working for that paycheck, when in reality, that's going to be detrimental to the relationships that we have in our life. And so we need to make sure that we're working for the right people. And what's it take? You know, do I have the right ingredients, the right supplies? Do I have the amount of time and money that it takes to get to what I want to accomplish? Because if I want to make something that's great and I only have 5 minutes, well, I probably need to switch it up to a microwave meal, right? That's not going to allow me the proper cook time to do the things that I need to do. And so we need to make sure that we have what it takes. And so work with what you got or what you can get, but you need to make sure that you have those kind of things in place. And if you don't, maybe you have the right goal. It's just that you need to attain certain things before you get there. If you want to have a great family who loves God, who is seeking after God, make sure that you have the right ingredients as parents. Make sure that as parents, you have the right ingredients in your life so that you can impact your kids in a great way. Those are huge things. There's 3 more things that I think are important. Be prepared, be informed, and be diligent. Be prepared, be informed, and be diligent. Right? So what do I need to preheat? What do I need to cook? What do I need to bring up to room temperature? Is there any ingredients I need to cut? I need to be prepared. Right? When you get into a relationship, you need to be prepared to get the outcome that you're trying to get. And if you're not quite right, it's going to really mess with the ingredients. But let's admit it. Sometimes in life, there are those moments, right? Kids allow us to grow up. They raise us up probably more than we raise them up. Because we're just not quite prepared. There are certain financial commitments that we make that when we enter in, we're not quite prepared for them. But we get there in a hurry. We try to reorganize our priorities. But it makes a whole lot more sense, right? If you're going to buy a house, to make sure that you have the income necessary to sustain the payments on that house so that you don't end up in foreclosure. It's a big time deal, right? So be prepared, be informed, right? What's the difference between a teaspoon and a tablespoon? Baking soda and baking powder. Huge for cooking. But there's some information that sometimes we have to realize we don't know, and we have to be willing to ask for help when we don't know these things. Gather the right information to get the outcome that you want. And so if you don't know it, figure it out. The third one is be diligent, right? Be focused and focus on finishing, right? You can start off with a great recipe, with great ingredients, with the best intentions of the world, but if you don't finish the recipe, if it never gets to completion, have you actually made it? And you definitely haven't made it well. Right? You can start off with the best intentions in the world of who to choose to marry, with what kind of family you're going to have. But if you don't finish well yourself, right? You can't control other people, but if you yourself don't finish well, if you're not focused on the end, if you're not focused on getting there, if you give up too quick, you let down, you don't follow through, you're not going to get the outcome that you set out to get. And so we have to make sure that we're diligent in this process. Well, there's a few other things, and these are coming specifically from Scripture, that I think help set the stage for our home life and for some of the things that we're striving to accomplish and that we're trying to set up correctly so that we have the right priorities, because the wrong priorities will be a wrecking ball. They will wreck our homes without a doubt. And so Genesis is, for me, a foundational piece, right? If God created the heavens and the earth, and I believe that he did, and he set up these rules, which I believe that he did. He's got a natural order to things. There's good and bad consequences to everything that we do, right? But it's set up within the way that God wants it to be, his design, his way. And so these things are super countercultural, without a doubt, right? So we go into Genesis and it says that God created man in his own image, right? We're created after God, but it wasn't good for man to be alone. He needed a helper. Right? So God put man to sleep, takes a rib from his side, creates woman. He's got a helper of man, and they're together. Right? They're supposed to be fruitful and multiply. Have kids, right? Fill the earth. And there's a natural order to that, right? That the man is made in God's image. And when man is made in God's image, he pours out his love and his mercy on his wife. And his wife comes next, and so then this relationship, and then when you have a male and a female, the way that we're designed, the way that God has created us to be, we will have a natural consequence, not a bad thing, right? A natural order of things is that the kids come next. Well, we need to remember those priorities when it comes to shaping up our life, right? That we put God first. Seek first the kingdom of God, Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. And everything else will be added unto you. Everything else will take care of itself. We need to seek God first. He'll give us the things that we need, not always the things that we want. And we have a difficult time with this, I think, in America, of determining what is a need and what is a want. What is a need and what is a want? What do I actually have to have? God will make sure that everything else gets taken care of if we seek him first. And so we put him first, we put our spouse second, and then comes our kids, right? We need to make sure that we take care of our marriage before we take care of our kids. We can also go into 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 5. So Paul is writing a letter to Timothy, and he's talking about church leadership. And one of the things is, how do we identify leaders in the church? And one of the qualifications, the things to be looking for is, do they take care of their family well? 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 5. Do they take care of their family well? Right? Because if they don't take care of their family, then why in the world are they in this position? And so we need to be looking for that. But it also kind of shows us some priorities, right? That God and church aren't on the same level. We seek God first, we take care of our spouse, our kids, and then church, right? Church doesn't come ahead of our family. We cannot sacrifice our families for the sake of the church, but we can for the sake of God, right? There's a difference here. We seek God first, but the church comes after family. Family is our primary mission field, primary focus of the things that we do. And if we can't do that well, we're probably not going to lead well in the church. And I would suggest even in other places, right? Because if we're a successful business person, but we lose our family, are we really that successful? It just doesn't make sense in my mind. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 through 25, it talks a little bit about the roles of husbands and wives, right? It uses a word that's super offensive to our generation today, submit. Wives, submit to your husbands. And then it goes on to say, and I think that we have to get both components there, husbands, love your wives. Both of which, though, if we take off this little clip at the end of it, we miss the point, right? As to the Lord, submit to your husband as you submit to Jesus. Love your wives as Jesus loved the church. Huge caveats there. And as our small group was meeting this last week, we even pulled in this Philippians chapter 2 passage where we should humble ourselves into the image of Christ, who didn't take equality with God as something that could be grasped, but he humbled himself, became nothing, and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Right? So if the man is willing to love his bride sacrificially, willing to die for her, willing to humble himself and to become nothing so that she can have what she needs to succeed, this is the kind of dude that you're going to submit to. Not because you have to, but because you're willing to. You trust him, you respect him, and you know that he is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, got your best interests at heart. Where does this get difficult? When trust has been broken. When respect is just not there. Then it becomes a whole lot more difficult. I also think it gets a whole lot more difficult when we're seeking to serve ourselves instead of the Lord, right? If you're submitting to your spouse the way that you submit to God, and the way you submit to God is not healthy, right? Because you want to be God, then you're probably not going to submit in the right way, right? But you have to humble yourself in the image of Christ just as the husband does. And so these two things kind of work together, love and respect, right? You love me and I'll respect you. I respect you and you'll love me, and it goes back and forth, back and forth. We give to each other until we get overwhelmed by life, the busyness, the taxes, the extra finances, the extra workload, the kids' responsibilities, and so many other things that you and I deal with in this world, all the busyness, the distractions of life. And so that we starve the system. We don't respect when we're supposed to respect. We don't love when we're supposed to love. And so that can go for a while, and somebody can be like, you know what, hey, I'll pick up the slack. I know you're busy. I know you're tired. But after a while, they just start to give up. They start to give in. But we need to realize that there is a natural order, right? We seek God first, or we follow after Christ, because we cannot love the person the way that Christ loved the church if we don't understand the love of Christ. We can't submit or respect the other person like Christ if we don't understand Christ. So Jesus first, and then our relationship. And then we go over into Ephesians chapter 6, and it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord. Right? It goes on to talk about fathers not exasperating your children. So there are some things, some pieces that come into play with all of this. But I think it's important, again, we see Jesus first, marriage second, and then our kids. Right? There's a relationship that exists within all of this. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 14 through 18 brings to us this idea of not being unequally yoked. And unequally yoked is this idea of being able to pull together, right? And one of the ways I try to explain it is, let's just say that you have 2 oxen, right? And they're pulling each at about 1,000 pounds. And so you yoke them together. That means you harness them together, and they're pulling together in the same direction at the same ability level. You're probably going to get greater than 2,000 pounds worth of pulling power because they're working together in tandem. Now, if they're unequally yoked, if one of them is lame, if one of them is not an oxen but a donkey, unequally yoked, they're not going to pull the same. As a matter of fact, one is going to hold the other back, and probably they're not going to reach ever the 2,000-pound pulling capacity that they would have individually. They're just too different. Right? And oftentimes it's not even that yoke that's trying to harness them together. It's two different directions, right? So if you're a believer and you're going this way, but your spouse is an unbeliever and they're going the opposite direction, there's always this tension and you're never pulling together in the same direction. That's a challenge. That's something that Paul is telling the church in Corinth to avoid, and I believe that we should avoid that too. It's actually a principle that goes so far back in the Old Testament. As the Israelites were leaving Egypt and they're making their way into the Promised Land is inhabited by a bunch of people who have rebelled against God, who are following after different gods. And so God actually tells the people, don't intermarry with these people. Because if you do, then you'll take their gods to be your gods. You'll leave me, you'll forsake me, and then we'll be in a difficult situation because then I'm going to have to punish you because you've done this. So just listen to me and I'll reward you. But if you do this, bad things are going to happen. And we see that. Right, we see that a number of places, but in Ezra chapter 9, verse 2, he talks about the punishment that you're experiencing right now, the exile, is because you entered into this land. You did not drive out evil. Matter of fact, you married into it, and you began to allow it to influence you. Guys, in our society today, there are so many things that are influencing us and threaten to destroy our relationships, and we need to be aware that this is a big-time deal for us, that we should not take what is of Christ and marry it to that which is of the world, because the worldly influences will impact us and it will bring us down. The probability is higher that that's going to happen. And it will affect our kids. We want to have a good, healthy, God-fearing family, but we marry somebody who is not a follower of God, it's going to impact our relationship. I believe that this is the second most important decision you can make. The first one is to seek God first. If you do that, it's going to impact every aspect of your life. If you don't do that, it will impact every aspect of your life. And if you're choosing to spend your life with someone, you raise kids with someone, your happiness, your stability, your respect, like every aspect of your life is influenced by this person that you're choosing to spend your life with. You should make sure that they are also a follower of Jesus, right? You have the right ingredients. There is no substitute for quality ingredients. It starts with ourselves, but also with the choices and who we spend our time with. I heard someone once say that we're the average of our 5 closest friends. And so even if you're not married or don't plan to be, or you're already married and you're looking for some other information, right? Who are you hanging out with? If you want to make sure that you're doing well in your business, find people who are striving for success in that area, not people who are failing, right? Not people who don't even own a business. If you're wanting to make sure that you can start something from scratch, find people who have started something from scratch. Right? Don't find somebody who's had it handed to them all their life. You want to make sure that you're impacting people and they're not impacting you, but chances are who we choose to hang with has a huge impact on our life. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Bad company corrupts good character. And so we need to make sure that we're choosing well who we hang out with. In high school, right? In college, in life in general, right? Who are you hanging out with? It influences your behavior, influences your talk, influences your financial choices. Choose wisely who you're choosing there. Also, Ephesians chapter 5, 6 through 14 talks about making sure that we don't take what is light and unite it with what's dark. They're very different. I won't sit too much on that one, but I will come back to the 1 Corinthians chapter 7 piece, which talks about the idea of being married to an unbeliever. So you're already married, right? You've already made that choice and that person is an unbeliever. Uh-oh, I screwed up. This is not good. Do I just leave that marriage and move on? Well, Paul says, nah, hold on. You are the opportunity, the hope to bring Jesus into that relationship, right? Don't leave that relationship. If they choose to leave, let them go. But as for you, you bring them Jesus, right? You bring this light into their world. And you bring that light, you bring Jesus to your kids. That's hugely important. But again, if they choose to leave, that's on them, right? And you're free at that point. But as far as it depends on you, bring them Jesus as much as you can, right? But you have to stay focused. You have to be diligent. You have to keep the end in mind. You have to make sure that you're focused on what it is that needs to get accomplished. And what it is that there is hope for your spouse. Don't go thinking that there's not. We serve a God who raises the dead. We serve a God who raises the dead. He can bring hope and healing to your spouse. He can bring hope and healing and restoration to your marriage, right? He can redeem your children from a broken situation. We serve a God who raises the dead. And so don't lose sight on that. But if you're married and in this situation, keep bringing them Jesus. There's, as I said, no substitute for quality ingredients. And this is, I think, something that is important for us to remember, that when we have the Spirit of God living in our life, it begins to change things for us, right? Galatians chapter 5, the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, right? We bring those things into the situation. Those radically change the relationship. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, talking about love. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. We bring those into our marriage relationship. We bring them into the way that we parent, into our household, and it begins to restore things. But if we get the right ingredients in the wrong order, we mix up the priorities, we wreck the whole thing. And so we've got to make sure that we get these priorities in the right order. So a couple of things as we talk about next steps, right? So if you have not sought first the kingdom of God, I want to encourage you to seek Jesus. Talk to me. Let's talk about baptism. Let's talk about surrender to Christ. And let's talk about putting him first. If your marriage is struggling, if you're hurting, talk to me. Let's talk through some marriage counseling, some other things that might help you in the process. If you're connected with media, right now media is free for those of you who are tuning in through Connection Christian Church. It's got tons of resources, right, on parenting, on finances, on marriage, and you can dig into those and you can do them as your leisure. You don't like to read, there's videos, right? You can watch the videos and learn. You can do a conference in your own house. You can find a couple other families and get together and do the same thing together. Hey, let's talk about parenting. Find a couple other families, bring them in, serve them supper, build relationships, and impact their walk. Your marriage is struggling. Find a few other couples, right? Hopefully other ones that can encourage you, maybe some others that are struggling too, and do this conference together through Right Now Media. That's something that is definitely there for you to do. And if you want some help, guidance along the way, guys, again, seek out that authority. Look for somebody who's wise, who's right, who's made right decisions, and go to them. And if you can't find them, then come to me, and we'll see what we can do to make this happen. The right foundation makes all the difference. Get the priorities right, get the family right, seek first the kingdom of God, right? And all other things will be added to you. That's a little bit about what we talked about on Sunday. Hope that's helpful to you guys. Take care. Have a great week.